A quiet sadness had settled over the village, a weight that even the sunniest days could not lift. Elara, the young lore keeper, felt this melancholy deep in her spirit, and she knew the stories she told by the hearth were no longer enough. So she made a choice that would change everything, leaving behind the familiar cobblestones and comforting routines of her home. She ventured toward the Whispering Glade, a place spoken of in quiet tones, where the very first melodies of creation were said to still hum in the air. Her quest was to find those ancient first songs and learn if their magic could truly bring peace to a grieving spirit. By the end of her journey, you will discover a profound sense of calm, a reminder that even the smallest voice can restore harmony to a weary world. What forgotten truths might be waiting in a place where light itself sings to those who listen? I would love to know, as you settle in with this tale, where you are listening from and what the local time is for you right now. What is one memory that always brings you a feeling of comfort? The worn leather of her satchel felt heavy with purpose, filled with simple provisions and the comforting weight of her glowing inkwell. Each step away from the village was a conscious choice, a physical unraveling of the life she had always known. Her boots left the familiar cobblestones and met the wooden planks of the Silverstream Bridge, its arch a silent gateway. With every footfall, the distant murmur of the mill and the scent of baking bread faded, replaced by the crisp scent of pine and the soft, untrodden earth of the forest path. A thrilling shiver of nerves raced up her spine, a feeling that was equal parts exhilaration and wonder. Her duty as lore keeper tugged at her heart like a taut string, but the call of the unknown, a faint melodic hum that tickled the edges of her hearing, pulled her forward with a stronger, more ancient force. The well-marked trail, a path she had seen travelers use for years, lay clear and broad to her left, yet the humming melody seemed to drift from a far less certain route, where the shadows were deeper and the foliage whispered secrets as it shifted in a wind she could not feel. It was a test of confidence, a challenge from the forest itself. Elara closed her eyes for a brief moment, listening past the frantic beat of her own heart, and made her decision. She turned her back on the safety of the known path and stepped into the embrace of the untamed woods, trusting the song in the air over the maps she had left behind. This single choice changed everything. The world she knew seemed to shrink and recede, the forest's enchantment weaving a palpable veil between her and home. Each root and twisting branch now felt like part of a living labyrinth, suggesting that the journey back might one day prove as mysterious as the path ahead. But the melody she followed grew ever clearer, a thread of silver sound pulling her onward through the deepening green, and as she pushed a final low-hanging branch aside, the source of that guiding hum revealed itself not in sound, but in sight. A soft, golden light began to filter through the dense canopy ahead, promising answers woven from the very fabric of the air itself. The air itself seemed to change as Elara stepped from the tangled woods into the Glimmerwood Clearing. Sunlight, thick and golden, poured through the open canopy, illuminating a breathtaking sight. Dozens of luminescent moths, their wings like fragments of captured moonlight, drifted and spun in an intricate, silent ballet. Their movements were not random, but a complex, flowing pattern that felt like a language written on the air. Without a second thought, Elara's hands lifted, her fingers tracing the arcs and loops of their dance. As she mirrored their motions, a soft gasp escaped her lips. The very light in the clearing responded, brightening and pulsing in a gentle rhythm with her movements. It was not just observation, it was a conversation, and the forest was answering. A profound sense of connection washed over her, a feeling of being part of something vast and ancient. Yet, alongside the wonder came a subtle but distinct sensation, a faint drain on her spirit, as if the act of connection required a small piece of her own vitality. In that moment, the lore keeper within her wrestled with the woman she was becoming. One part of her mind raced to document the patterns, to analyze the cause and effect of this responsive light. But a stronger, more instinctive urge pushed her to do more than just watch. She wanted to join the dance, to add her own voice to this symphony of light and motion. Taking a steadying breath, she made her choice. She let her hands fall still and closed her eyes, reaching for a memory of comfort. From her lips, a simple, healing rhyme from her village emerged, a melody sung to soothe a scraped knee or a troubled heart. She poured all her hope for her home, all her longing for peace, into the soft, clear notes. The clearing reacted instantly. The golden light swelled into a brilliant, warm radiance, and the moths ceased their individual dances. They streamed together, their bodies weaving a shimmering, ephemeral image in the air before her, a fleeting map of a path, dappled with leaf shadow. It hung there for just a heartbeat, a clear directive, before the moths scattered and the light softened once more. The clue was given, but the cost was felt, a gentle weariness that settled in her bones. The luminous path, now imprinted on her mind, beckoned her forward, away from the sunlit clearing and into the deeper woods, where the scent of damp earth and the perfume of mysterious night flowers promised the next step of her journey. The path the moths had shown her led into a realm of profound silence, where the air grew cool and the light turned a deep, liquid green. Towering trees formed a living colonnade, their roots sprawling across the ground like sleeping serpents. And there, in the very center of the narrow trail, stood the guardian. It was a treant of immense age, its bark a tapestry of silver-gray grooves and mossy patches, and upon its broad trunk, runes glowed with a soft, internal light. It did not move, yet its presence was an unmovable wall, a sentinel that had witnessed ages turn. Elara felt a quiet awe, a sense that she was stepping into a space held apart from the world. Her first instinct was to explain her quest, to fill the quiet with words, but the silence of the woods felt deliberate, a language older than speech. She understood that this was not a challenge to be met with force, but a purpose to be honored. With a calm she did not fully feel, she unslung her water flask, the only offering she possessed. She approached slowly, her movements deliberate and unthreatening, and knelt before the great roots. Pouring the clear water gently onto the ancient, thirsty wood, she began to hum the simple song of gratitude from her village, the same one she had sung in the clearing. It was a melody that thanked the earth for its sustenance, a recognition of gifts given and received. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, with a sound like a distant mountain shifting, the treant stirred. The rough bark of its face rearranged itself into a gentle, weathered expression, and a single, low-hanging branch descended before her. At its tip grew a single leaf, which pulsed with a soft, eternal golden light, a tiny captured star. As she carefully took it, a wave of warmth flowed up her arm, a tangible blessing. The treant's massive limb then lifted, pointing unmistakably down a steep, descending path into a mossy canyon below. From that shadowed, beautiful depth, a new sound drifted up to meet her, not a melody, but a deep, resonant, and profoundly harmonious hum that seemed to vibrate from the very stone beneath her feet. The descent into the canyon was a journey into sound itself. Each footfall on the loose scree did not just create a noise, it bloomed into a clear, resonant chime. Her own breathing produced a soft, harmonic whisper that swirled around her. Curious, Elara clapped her hands in a simple, 3-beat rhythm. The canyon did not merely repeat it. The echoes multiplied, layering over one another, transforming her clap into a cascading sequence of bell-like tones that wove themselves into a brief, complex melody before fading away. This was not an empty chamber of repetition, but a place that refined raw noise into art. The true challenge became immediately clear. Every movement, every rustle of her cloak, added another thread to a beautiful but overwhelming tapestry of sound. Her own presence was the source of the complexity, and the guiding melody she sought was lost within the symphony of her own making. She needed to hear what the canyon sang when left to its own devices. Making a conscious choice, she found a smooth, flat stone beside a tiny trickle of water and sat down. She closed her eyes, willing her mind to quiet, letting go of the urgency of her quest and the concern for her village. She focused only on the slow, steady rhythm of her own heart, allowing the last of her self-made sounds to settle and fade. In the profound silence that she offered, the canyon began to truly speak. A new melody emerged, so subtle it was felt more than heard. It was a story woven from sound, a tale of gentle starlight, nurturing the first seeds of life, of deep roots and patient growth. This was the true voice of the place, a song of quiet creation. As she finally opened her eyes, fully attuned to the hidden music, she saw its physical manifestation. A path of softly glowing stones, like fallen stars embedded in the canyon wall, illuminated a narrow ledge leading upward. The way forward was not a secret to be uncovered by force, but a gift offered to those who learn to listen. The starlit trail guided her ascent out of the canyon's depths, onto a high, windswept plateau where a tapestry of emerging stars stretched across the vast, darkening sky. A vast, silent plateau stretched out beneath a tapestry of emerging stars. At its center lay a circle of smooth, dark stones, each one humming with a distinct, low frequency that vibrated up through the soles of her boots. Elara walked the circumference, her ears straining to isolate each unique pitch. This was not a random arrangement, but a celestial instrument waiting for its player. The air grew cold, a sharp contrast to the warmth of the glowing leaf she carried, and she felt the immense pressure of the moment. A single misstep, one note hummed out of sequence, and the delicate magic humming in the stones could simply fade into silence. Drawing on the memory of the canyon's perfect echoes, she trusted her ear completely. She began to move, touching each stone in the order its tone demanded, and as her fingers made contact, she hummed its matching pitch. The first note hung alone in the stillness. The second joined it, creating a simple interval. With the third, a chord began to form, a structure of pure, resonant light that shimmered in the air above the circle. She did not rush, her focus absolute, her breath steady despite the chill. When the final stone was touched and the last note hummed, the completed chord swelled into a brilliant, harmonious pillar of silver light. High above, a constellation responded. Its stars flared with sudden intensity, their familiar patterns shifting and realigning into a new design. From this realigned constellation, a map of shimmering light projected downward, settling onto the stone circle at her feet. It charted riverways and forest paths, a glowing guide to the next phase of her journey. A wave of triumphant confidence washed over her, a warmth that fought back the cold night. But that warmth was quickly tempered as she studied the map's endpoint. The path led directly into a region the map itself named the Weeping Woods. The name alone settled a weight upon her spirit, a whisper of a place where the air was heavy with echoes of the past. As the starry map faded from the stones, its final glimmer pointed unmistakably toward a dense, mist-shrouded forest in the distance, a threshold she now had to cross. The threshold of the Weeping Woods was a veil of mist and soft rain. A gentle, persistent shower fell, not from any cloud she could see, but from the leaves of the trees themselves, each droplet a shimmering bead of liquid light. The air was thick with a profound and ancient feeling, a weight that pressed on her chest and whispered of faded joys and deep reflection. Elara's own quiet feelings, memories of villagers she missed, and a gentle solitude she had long carried, rose within her, tempting her to simply sit and listen with the forest. She gripped the treant's leaf, its warm, steady glow pushing back against the heavy atmosphere and becoming her only lantern in the dim, soft twilight. To simply walk through this place felt overwhelming, a giving in to the surrounding mood, so she began to sing. It was not a grand or powerful ballad, but the soft, comforting lullaby her own mother had sung to her, a melody woven from safety and unconditional love. At first, her voice was a fragile thread against the forest sigh, but she poured into it every memory of warmth she possessed, the feeling of sun on her face, the sound of shared laughter, the steadfast hope that had driven her from her home. She offered her joy as a comfort against the feeling around her. The woods responded. The shimmering rainfall began to slow, the constant weeping softening to a gentle, glistening drip. The great, thoughtful trees, their bark streaked with luminous trails, seemed to lean in, listening. With a soft, groaning shift of roots and earth, they moved, just enough to widen the path before her, creating a clear route forward, as if soothed and grateful for the kindness in her song. Overcoming the emotional gravity of this place had strengthened her spirit, a hard-won resilience that left her feeling both lighter and more aware. This had been a test of heart, and the forest's quiet reaction was a clear sign that the magic ahead would challenge her emotional core in even deeper ways. As the last notes of her lullaby faded, the path ahead opened not into more shadows, but into a sunlit grove where the air was suddenly warm and rich with the scent of honey and wild thyme. Sunlight drenched the grove, warm and heavy with the scent of honey and wild thyme. At its heart lay a pond of such impossible clarity, it seemed a piece of the sky had fallen to the earth. Around its edges grew reeds of pure, shimmering crystal, and from them came a sound like 1,000 gentle voices murmuring just below the threshold of hearing. Elara knelt in the soft grass, her own breath held as she leaned closer. The whispers were not random, but distinct musical phrases, repeating and overlapping in a fragmented, ancient chorus. These were not echoes, but memories, the very fragments of the first songs she had crossed the world to find. A profound longing filled her, a deep need to carry this guidance with her. Yet the grove itself seemed to resist the idea of its secrets being taken. The air grew still, the gentle whispers pausing as if in question, and she felt the weight of its silent gaze. It would be a mistake to simply to remove a piece of this symbolic place for her own ends. Her quest was for healing, not possession. With a voice soft but clear, she made a promise to the quiet air. I vow to use this gift only for healing and for understanding, to honor the song and not silence it. The moment the words left her lips, the whispering returned, softer now, a sound of consent. One raid, slender and cool to the touch, leaned toward her. She reached out and carefully lifted it from the soft earth. In her hand, it continued its soft, melodic whisper, a constant and gentle guide. A new connection snapped into place within her, a deepening attunement to the ancient magic that now felt her presence more keenly than ever before. She had her tool, but she also had a responsibility, a pact that tied the success of her journey to the well-being of this very grove. The whispering reed in her palm then subtly pulled her attention, its quiet melody harmonizing with a new sound drifting from the tree line, a distant, beautiful chiming like a forest of crystalline bells. The chiming grew into a symphony as she reached the edge of the trees. A narrow arch of living crystal spanned a deep, misty chasm, each segment of the bridge shaped like an enormous, translucent bell. With every gust of wind, the entire structure hummed with a quiet, waiting music. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of violet and deep blue, and Elara knew she had to cross before the light failed completely. Her first tentative step onto the smooth, cool surface produced a clear, high chime that hung in the air. It was beautiful, but she quickly understood the bridge's nature. A second step, placed on a different crystal, rang out with a clashing, jarring note that sent a physical shudder through the structure and up her legs. The bridge itself was testing her, demanding harmony. She closed her eyes for a moment, gripping the whispering reed in her hand. Its soft, melodic fragment wove through her thoughts, a simple, ascending scale of pure notes. She opened her eyes and began to listen with her whole being, carefully tapping a potential stepping stone with the toe of her boot. A dull, flat tone answered. She moved on, testing another. This one rang with a clear, resonant pitch that perfectly matched the first note from her reed. Placing her full weight upon it, she felt the crystal solidify beneath her feet, its inner structure glowing with a soft, steady light. Step by painstaking step, she repeated the process, her body an instrument of delicate balance. The fading light made every choice more urgent, every decision critical. Her muscles ached with the strain of controlled movement, her mind wholly focused on the sequence of the song. One misstep sent another discordant shudder through the bridge, a reminder of the fragile space below, but she recentered herself, found the next correct note, and continued. As she reached the final stones, the entire bridge was now a radiant pathway of integrated light, each harmonious step strengthening the whole. When her feet finally found solid ground on the far side, the crystal arch let out one last, collective, and perfectly resolved chord that echoed into the twilight. She had not just crossed a gap, she had performed a rite of passage, her will and the ancient magic now working in concert. Before her, the land fell away into a vast, mist-filled valley, that seemed to hold the very breath of the world. And from that profound depth, a chorus of harmonious voices rose, a weave of melodies more complex and beautiful than anything she had ever heard. It was not a single song, but many, all woven together, calling her name on the currents of the wind. The path down into the valley was a gentle slope, the mist parting before her like a curtain as the first rays of dawn touched the highest peaks. What she saw in the basin below stole the breath from her lungs. The valley was filled with beings of gentle, shifting light, their forms flowing like liquid starlight as they moved in a slow, circular dance. From them came the chorus she had heard, a weave of melodies so ancient and pure, it felt like the first thought of the world given voice. This was the source, the living wellspring of the first songs. A profound awe held her motionless for a long moment. To join them felt both like a sacred privilege and an impossible test. How could her single, mortal voice add anything to this perfection without breaking its delicate balance? She stepped forward, her movements hesitant, and the circle of light beings parted seamlessly to admit her. Taking a place among them, she closed her eyes and simply listened, letting the complex harmonies wash over her until she felt their rhythm in her own pulse. Then, drawing the whispering reed from her satchel, she lifted it to her lips. She did not try to mimic the grand themes around her. Instead, she offered the simple, healing melody from her village, the one she had sung in the clearing and to the treant, weaving it as a soft counter melody that danced between the larger notes of the chorus. It was a gift of her own experience, her own heart. The moment her unique voice joined with theirs, the song swelled into a new, breathtaking dimension. The entire valley brightened as if the sun had risen twice, the very air thickening with a restorative magic that was sweet and cool to breathe. At her feet, where the ground had been simple moss, flowers of impossible colors burst into bloom, their petals unfurling in time with the music. She could feel the song flowing out from the circle, and watching its path, she saw its tangible effect. A distant section of the valley, where the trees had been gray and brittle, suddenly shimmered with new, vibrant green life as the harmonious magic washed over it. Her journey was not just about finding answers, it was about actively mending the world. As the final, resonant note of the collective song faded into a peaceful silence, the lead being of light, a taller, brighter figure, turned its serene gaze upon her. It did not speak, but extended a luminous hand, gesturing for her to follow it deeper into the now transformed valley, toward the quiet heart where the oldest truths were waiting. At the valley's quiet heart, the lead being of light gestured toward a sight that made Elara's breath catch. A massive crystal, the size of a small hill, pulsed with a soft, rhythmic light from where it rose from the earth. This was the Heartstone, the source from which all the first songs flowed. Yet its light was uneven, its deep hum touched with a faint dissonance. A hairline crack, delicate as a spider's web, ran across one of its facets, and from this tiny flaw, the stone's vital energy was slowly seeping away. The being of light did not speak, but its intent washed over her like a wave. She was to mend it. The task felt impossibly large, a mountain placed upon her shoulders. To fall short would mean more than personal disappointment. It would mean the slow dimming of this entire magical world, the fading of the songs that sustained it. She felt the weight of that possibility as a deep pressure within. Taking a steadying breath, she called upon every lesson, the journey had taught her. She held the treant's leaf aloft, its warm, golden glow pushing back against the stone's dimness and providing a focal point for her concentration. She lifted the whispering reed to her lips, its simple, ancient fragment providing the foundational melody around which she would build her song. Then she closed her eyes and began to sing. It was not the grand chorus of the light beings, but something far more intimate. She wove the village's healing rhyme, the gratitude song for the earth, and her mother's lullaby into a single, powerful plea. She poured into the melody every memory of comfort she possessed, the scent of fresh baked bread, the sound of children's laughter, the steadfast hope that had flickered in her own heart, even in the village's deepest sadness. The strain was immense, sustaining the complex, mending magic felt like holding a star in her hands, the effort draining her own spirit as she poured it into the stone. Her voice grew hoarse, her body trembled with the concentration, but she did not stop. She focused on the image of her home, whole and happy, using that deep, personal connection as her anchor. As she sang, the tiny crack in the Heartstone began to glow, the edges of the fissure softening and flowing together like liquid light. With a final, resonant note that came from the very core of her being, the crack sealed completely. A wave of brilliant, warm light erupted from the stone, washing over the entire valley in a silent, healing tide. It washed over her too, and she felt the weariness vanish from her limbs, her own spirit replenished and brimming with the same energy she had just restored. In that moment, she felt a new connection snap into place, a permanent bond between her own life and the magic of the First Age. She was no longer just a lore keeper seeking answers. She was now a guardian of the source itself. As the brilliant light stabilized into a steady, powerful radiance, the beings of light around her began to fade, their forms dissolving into the air like morning mist touched by the sun. Their long vigil was over. A profound and peaceful silence fell across the valley, a quiet that was not empty, but full, holding the echo of a song now perfectly complete. A quiet joy settled in her chest as she turned her back on the valley. The journey home felt entirely different, as if the forest itself now knew her name. The whispering reed in her satchel provided a constant, melodic guide, and she hummed the mending song under her breath, a simple tune that seemed to keep the path clear and friendly. Where tangled roots had once challenged her, they now seemed to shift subtly, offering a smoother way forward. A family of silver foxes appeared at the edge of a clearing, trotting alongside her for a time before veering off with a flick of their bushy tails, their presence feeling less like chance and more like a deliberate escort. This ease was a gift, a confirmation of her transformation, but it also sharpened the new anxiety growing within her. How could she possibly explain the living light of the Heartstone to people who measured magic in the success of a harvest or the strength of a repaired roof? The profound peace she carried felt too vast for words. This concern guided her hands as she walked. She paused at the crystal bridge, carefully collecting a small, fallen shard that chimed with a pure note when touched. Near the Glimmerwood Clearing, she held out her palm for a drifting moth to brush against, its wing dust leaving a shimmering, golden trace on her skin that refused to fade. At the edge of the Singing Canyon, she filled a tiny vial with dew that held the faint echo of a harmonious hum. These were not mere souvenirs, but teaching aids, tangible pieces of the wonder she had witnessed, meant to bypass doubt and speak directly to the heart. The stakes of her return had quietly escalated, moving from a personal test of survival to a communal test of faith. Could she translate this epic magic into a language her people could understand and trust? The responsibility felt heavier than her satchel, a weight of expectation she had chosen to carry. Then, through a final break in the trees, she saw it. The familiar wooden arch of the Silverstream Bridge spanned the river ahead, its solid, weathered planks, a gateway back to the world she had left behind. The familiar creak of the Silverstream Bridge under her feet was a sound from another lifetime. As Elara stepped from the wild woods onto the worn cobblestones of home, a small crowd had already gathered, their faces etched with worry and a fragile hope. They had felt her absence like a missing note in their daily song. She did not begin with grand tales of crystal bridges or singing canyons. Instead, she walked directly to a small, withered garden patch near the bridge, its plants gray and brittle from the same sorrow that had gripped the village. From her satchel, she drew the vial of humming canyon dew and the shard of chiming crystal. Holding them aloft, she closed her eyes and began to hum the mending song, the simple melody she had forged at the Heartstone. The tokens in her hands glowed, and the air above the garden thickened, shimmering. Then, a gentle, glowing rain began to fall, each droplet a tiny, radiant star that soaked into the parched earth. Before their astonished eyes, the gray stems flushed with green, leaves unfurled and brilliant, impossible flowers burst into bloom, their petals soft and vibrant. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd, followed by a wave of relieved laughter as the heavy melancholy visibly lifted from their shoulders. Yet from the back, an elder's voice, weathered by years and caution, spoke softly. "This is the old magic," he said. "We do not know its price." The joy faltered, uncertainty clouding a few faces. Elara understood their fear, the deep-seated worry that such power could demand too much. She walked to the newly blooming flowers and gently placed her hand upon them. Then she turned to the skeptical elder, her voice calm and sure. "Feel its truth," she invited. He hesitated, then stepped forward and laid his own gnarled hand upon a velvety petal. His eyes widened as he felt not just the coolness of the plant, but a residual, gentle warmth and a subtle, harmonious hum that vibrated up through his fingers, a sensation of pure, benevolent life. The last of his doubt melted away, replaced by a quiet wonder. In that moment, Elara's place was remade. She was no longer just the keeper of old stories, but a living bridge to the magic that could heal their world. The villagers celebrated, their voices weaving together in a new, hopeful chorus. But as the sun set, Elara felt a quiet, insistent pull from the Whispering Glade in her satchel. It was not a demand, but a gentle reminder, a hum that resonated deep within her own spirit, confirming that her connection to the first songs was now a permanent, lifelong bond. Twilight became a time of soft voices and shared warmth in the village. Each evening, Elara would gather everyone near the central hearth, and they would sing the simple, healing melodies she had brought back from her journey. It was not a formal ceremony, but a quiet ritual of connection, their collective voices weaving a gentle peace over the homes and fields. She also began teaching the children, showing them how to quiet their own thoughts and listen for the hidden music all around them. They learned to hear the stream's cheerful melody over the stones, the wind's low hum through the pines, and the rustling, percussive rhythm of the leaves. As the days turned into weeks, a subtle but profound shift took hold. The village itself seemed to breathe more easily. Bread baked in the communal ovens rose higher and tasted sweeter. Minor cuts and scrapes healed with astonishing speed, and a general sense of well-being settled over the people, fostering a new, deeper appreciation for the world they inhabited. Yet for Elara, this beautiful transformation came with its own quiet conflict. A part of her, the part that had walked with beings of light, yearned to delve deeper into the First Age's secrets, to follow the Whispering Reed's call toward even greater mysteries. Her duty, however, was here, nurturing this fragile, newfound harmony. After much reflection, she made her choice. She would remain as the village's guide and teacher, but she would also schedule journeys, returning to the Whispering Glade with each turn of the season to renew her bond with the source and learn more. This decision planted the ancient magic firmly in the soil of daily life, ensuring its survival, but it also meant her life would forever be a balance between two worlds, her heart perpetually stretched between the familiar warmth of home and the silent call of the glade. One evening, as the community's united song rose into the darkening sky, she noticed a new face at the edge of the gathering. A young woman, recently arrived from a neighboring hamlet, listened with an intensity that was more than mere curiosity, her eyes reflecting a deep, unspoken longing that Elara recognized instantly. The young woman's name was Lyra, and her shyness masked a deep, resonant connection to the world's quietest songs. Elara found her one morning, not at the hearth, but standing perfectly still by the village well, her head tilted as if listening to something in the deep, dark water below. It was Kale, the quiet boy who helped the miller, who first noticed her unique gift. He pointed out to Elara how Lyra could distinguish the individual melodies of 3 different birds singing at once, a skill that went beyond good hearing into the realm of innate perception. Seeing the same hungry wonder in Lyra that had once driven her from the village, Elara knew what she had to do. She approached the young woman and softly asked if she would like to learn how to listen to the rain, not just as weather, but as a complex, rhythmic language. Lyra's eyes widened, and she nodded. A silent pact formed between them. Under Elara's patient guidance, Lyra did not just learn, she bloomed. She quickly moved from identifying the hidden patterns in birdsong to gently encouraging the village gardens to grow a little straighter, her quiet hums seeming to straighten the stems of young seedlings. She discovered that by tracing a specific pattern in the air near a sputtering candle, its flame would burn steadier and brighter. These were small magics, but they were tangible, and the villagers watched with a mixture of awe and a new, subtle tension. A few of the other young people who had joined Elara's open classes began to exchange sidelong glances, their questions carrying a faint, unspoken edge. Why did Lyra get to learn the deeper secrets? Wasn't the magic meant for everyone equally? Elara felt this jealousy, like a discordant note in the village's new harmony. She understood their longing, but she also recognized that Lyra's talent was a rare instrument, already tuned to a finer pitch. The conflict tugged at her. Letting go of being the sole keeper of this knowledge was a challenge she had not fully anticipated. A part of her wanted to hold the most beautiful secrets close, to remain the unique bridge between two worlds. But the memory of the Heartstone's crack, a flaw born of isolation, steeled her resolve. She made a decision that would shape the village's future. She reaffirmed her commitment to the open classes, ensuring every villager had access to the foundational songs and practices. But for Lyra, and for Kale, whose own keen ear was developing beautifully, she reserved time for advanced lessons, guiding them toward the more delicate art of not just hearing the magic, but conversing with it. This ensured the knowledge would survive and deepen, but it was a choice that accepted a necessary risk. By placing these tools into other hands, the magic would inevitably change, growing in ways she could not foresee. This new reality revealed itself during a lesson on a grassy hill. Elara was teaching the group how to feel the vibrational hum of different stones, when Lyra, who had been staring at the sky, gently touched her arm. "Look," she said, her voice full of soft certainty. "The clouds are singing in canon today." Elara followed her gaze to her. The clouds were simply beautiful. But as she quieted her own mind, she began to see it too. The way the smaller, faster clouds moved in repeating, melodic loops against the slow, deep bass line of a larger cumulus formation. It was a harmonious pattern she herself had never noticed, a new layer of the world's music being revealed through the perception of her student. The magic was already speaking through Lyra in a dialect all her own, and the path ahead suddenly felt both wondrous and beautifully, terrifyingly unknown. The first true chill of autumn was a signal Elara had been waiting for. She packed a small satchel with only the essentials, a water skin, a loaf of dark bread, and the ever-present whispering reed. Then she did something she had never done before. She sought out Kale. The boy's quiet focus had deepened over the weeks, his ability to listen now matched by a patient understanding. She asked if he would walk with her to the Silverstream Bridge and a little way beyond. His eyes, usually so calm, lit with a spark of pure, unadulterated wonder. As they left the village, Elara began his first real lesson. She showed him how to place his feet on the bridge, not as a structure of wood, but as a living threshold, feeling for the subtle shift in the air that signaled the crossing from the mundane to the magical. She pointed out the way. A certain cluster of foxgloves leaned toward the path, a natural signpost, and how the chatter of squirrels took on a more melodic, deliberate rhythm the deeper they went. With every step, a quiet tension grew within her. The forest she knew as a second home felt suddenly vast and full of hidden presence when she was responsible for another. Every rustle in the undergrowth made her instinctively step closer to him, her protective nature warring with her desire to let him discover the woods for himself. When they reached the familiar, mossy path that led to the ancient Treant, she made a decision that felt both right and terrifying. She would not take him further. Instead, she gave Kale a task. She told him the old guardian valued quiet respect above all else. His mission was to sit at the base of the great roots, offer a song of gratitude from his own heart, and wait patiently for a sign of acknowledgement. It was a test of his patience and his sincerity, a real responsibility that placed the success of a small part of a ritual in his hands. Trusting him with this piece of her journey raised the stakes immeasurably. The future of this knowledge no longer rested solely on her shoulders, but on her ability to pass it on to capable hands. As she turned to continue her solitary path toward the Whispering Glade, the familiar pull of the ancient magic was there, but it was joined by a new, comforting sensation. It was the quiet hum of a melody being learned by another, a harmony starting far behind her, ensuring the song would continue long after her own voice faded. The familiar hum of the Whispering Glade welcomed her like a long-awaited sigh. Luminescent moths wove their silent dances around her, their light pulsing in gentle recognition as she stepped into the clearing. This time, her stay was not one of desperate seeking, but of deliberate creation. For days, she did not simply rest, she composed. She sang the story of Kale's quiet patience into a slow, steady melody that made the moss at her feet grow thick and velvety. She wove the villagers' hopeful chorus into a brighter, more complex harmony that coaxed bursts of tiny, star-like blossoms from the bare earth. Each new song was an experiment, a gift offered to see how the ancient magic would respond. And respond it did. The glade flourished with wonders she had never witnessed before. Vines shimmered with opalescent leaves, and the very air began to sparkle with motes of light that arranged themselves into intricate, fleeting patterns, mirroring the new structures in her music. She was not just a visitor anymore, she was a co-creator, and her unique human experiences were enriching the source itself. This perfect, evolving harmony made the thought of leaving feel like a deep, personal longing. The glade offered a peace so complete, it felt like an answer to every concern. Why return to the complicated work of teaching and mediating when she could remain here, composing in this symphony of light forever? Her duty to the village felt like a distant memory, a connection to a world of challenges. But as she watched a new flower, one with petals that slowly shifted through the colors of a sunset, unfurl to one of her melodies, she understood. This beauty was not meant for her alone. Its true purpose was to be shared, to mend the weary corners of the world. The choice felt like a division within her own spirit, but her decision was clear. She would return, but she would also come back, committing herself to a lifelong cycle of learning abroad and teaching at home. On the morning of her departure, as she sang a final song of gratitude, a single moth alighted on her open palm. In its delicate grasp was a seed, no larger than a pebble, that pulsed with a soft, golden light from within. It was a token of their bond, a living piece of the glade's magic entrusted to her care. Cradling the warm, vibrant seed in her hand, she felt the profound truth of her path settle deep within her. She would forever feel the pull of two homes, her heart perpetually stretched between the silent, singing glade and the waiting, hopeful voices of her village. The warm, pulsing seed felt like a captured heartbeat in Elara's palm as she knelt in the rich soil of the community garden. The entire village formed a quiet circle around the freshly turned earth, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of twilight and shared anticipation. As Elara carefully placed the seed into the ground, a collective breath was held, and then, as one, they began to sing the mending song. Their voices wove together, a tapestry of hope and gratitude that seemed to sink into the soil with the seed itself. The next morning, a gasp from the garden drew everyone from their homes. Where the seed had been planted, a slender, beautiful tree now stood, its bark smooth and silver, and its leaves a cascade of shimmering, heart-shaped forms that seemed to hold captured light within their veins. After the sun set that evening, the true wonder revealed itself. The tree emitted a gentle, calming radiance, a soft silver light that pushed back the darkness without blinding the stars, casting long, peaceful shadows and bathing the entire garden in a serene glow. It quickly became the heart of the village, a natural gathering place where people would meet to talk, to sing, or simply to sit in quiet comfort under its benevolent branches. The tree's presence was a constant, gentle reminder of the connection between their small world and the vast, ancient magic Elara had brought home. Yet, not every heart was immediately at ease. A few villagers voiced quiet concerns, their whispers threading through the community like a faint, discordant note. They worried the tree's light was too potent, a beacon that might one day draw the curious or the envious from beyond their secluded valley. Was such powerful magic truly safe to keep so openly in their midst? Elara understood that this feeling was a natural reaction, a final step in their journey toward acceptance. She called for a meeting to be held not in the meeting hall, but directly under the tree's shimmering canopy. As the community gathered, the tree's calming light seemed to physically soften the edges of their anxiety, encouraging thoughtful voices and patient listening. Elara did not dismiss their concerns, but instead invited everyone to share their feelings openly. She explained that the tree's magic was not a force to be controlled, but a relationship to be nurtured, a symbol of the trust they had already placed in the ancient songs. The conversation, guided by the tree's gentle influence, moved from worry to wonder, culminating in a shared understanding that their village was now part of something larger and beautifully protected. This successful integration marked the village's full embrace of the old magic, transforming them from a quiet, reflective community into a living beacon of harmony that subtly influenced the entire region. One evening, under the tree's soft light, Kale shyly stepped forward. He had been practicing, he said, and with Elara's encouraging nod, he began to sing a simple melody he had composed himself. It was a song about the cheerful persistence of the silver stream and the patient, watchful nature of the stars, a humble but perfect addition to their growing library of music. The days Kale was gone felt longer than any winter. Elara moved through her tasks with a quiet focus, her thoughts perpetually drifting toward the forest path. Every snap of a twig or distant bird call sent a jolt through her, a deep worry that she had sent a piece of her own heart into the unknown too soon. She wrestled with the image of him being alone or unsure, the teacher in her warring with a fierce, protective instinct she had not known she possessed. Yet each time the anxiety rose, she would pause, breathe deeply, and remember the quiet confidence in his eyes when he had left. She trusted the lessons she had shared, and more importantly, she trusted the forest to guide a sincere heart. This internal struggle was the final, necessary step in letting go, a confirmation that the knowledge was truly passing into new hands. When Kale finally appeared on the bridge on the second evening, unharmed and walking with a new, grounded assurance, her relief was a physical warmth that washed through her. He did not simply return with a new melody, he returned with a story. He told the gathered villagers how a young fox, startled and confused by a falling branch, had frozen on the narrow canyon path. Instead of startling it further, Kale had begun to hum the simple, calming tune he was there to learn. The animal's frantic energy had softened, its breathing slowing until it gave him a long, quiet look before slipping peacefully back into the undergrowth. This was more than a successful test. It was a demonstration of deep empathy, proving he understood the music was a tool for connection, not just collection. The melody he brought back was one of clarity and gentle reflection, and it quickly became a cherished part of the evening sings, its notes helping to smooth away the worries of the day. Watching the village embrace Kale's contribution, Elara felt a profound shift within herself. Her purpose was evolving, With the tradition now securely rooted in the next generation, her own spirit felt the pull of the unknown once more. That night, she unrolled her own worn maps, her fingers tracing a route to a place known only in travelers' tales, a body of water said to hold the night sky within its depths, the Starlet Lake. The path to the Starlet Lake was a trail of quartz dust that glittered faintly in the moonlight, leading Elara to a body of water, so still it seemed a piece of the cosmos had been laid upon the earth. Its surface was a perfect, dark mirror, holding every star, every wisp of galaxy in flawless detail. A deep, resonant hum vibrated up through the soles of her boots, a foundational note that seemed to hold the entire scene in equilibrium. The air was crisp and cool, carrying the scent of wet stone and night-blooming jasmine. Compelled by an instinct she did not fully understand, she removed her boots and stepped cautiously into the water. The cold was a sharp shock, but it was the water's response that truly stole her breath. As she moved her hands through the dark surface, she did not just create ripples. The reflected stars themselves shifted, swirling away from her touch and rearranging themselves into new, intricate constellations that hung in the water like luminous silver threads. One pattern formed the shape of a great, sleeping beast curled around a mountain. Another showed a shower of falling stars, nurturing a field of crystalline flowers. These were not random shapes, but narratives. Each arrangement was a story from the first age, a lost tale of creation and quiet magic waiting to be read. The concentration required was immense. Her body grew numb from the cold, her legs aching from standing perfectly still for so long. Her mind strained to hold the complex patterns in her memory before they dissolved back into the general sky, a fleeting glimpse into a vast library written in light. To truly preserve this knowledge, she needed more than memory. She decided to remain for several nights, returning to the shore each time to meticulously sketch the star stories in her journal by the light of her glowing leaf. She then composed simple, melodic phrases to accompany each sketch, musical mnemonics that would allow her to carry the essence of the stories home. This discovery was a monumental gift, a trove of new lore that would enrich her teachings for years to come. Yet, with this expansion of knowledge came a humbling realization of its vast, almost infinite scope. The lake was a single page in an endless chronicle. On her final night, as she prepared to leave, the lake offered one last vision. Her hands moved through the water, and the stars flowed into a new, stark pattern, a silhouette of jagged, unfamiliar peaks, under a sky streaked with what looked like frozen lightning. It was a clear, undeniable map, a hint of another place of power, another chapter waiting in the silent stone of a distant mountain range. Elara returned from the Starlet Lake, not with mere souvenirs, but with a new library written in light. She did not wait for the evening, gathering the entire village under the glowing tree as the first stars pricked the twilight sky. Unfurling her journal, she showed them the sketches of the sleeping mountain beast and the field of crystalline flowers, her voice weaving the tales of constellation heroes and deep celestial harmonies. The new songs she had composed, simple and haunting, turned the complex lore into something they could carry in their hearts. To make the stories live and breathe, she invited the children forward, guiding them to act out the tales of patient giants and nurturing showers of stars right there on the soft grass. Laughter and wonder filled the night air as the village's cultural life blossomed new songs and stories weaving themselves into the very fabric of their shared identity. The children, especially, developed a lively, personal interest in the night sky, pointing out patterns and inventing their own small stories. This vibrant focus on the heavens, however, soon drew a quiet question from Bren, a farmer known for his practical hands and steadfast dedication to the soil. He watched the children tracing star shapes in the air and asked, his voice not unkind but genuinely curious, how this stargazing helped to mend a fence or ensure a strong harvest. Elara understood his concern was rooted in a deep care for the community's well-being. She did not dismiss his question, but instead asked him to walk with her to his own field the next morning. Standing among the young, green shoots, she pointed to the sky. She explained how the story of the steadfast mountain beast was not just about a giant, but a lesson in the patience required for deep roots to take hold. She connected the tale of the nurturing star shower to the unseen, constant cycles of growth that happen below the soil, dependent on both timely rain and patient waiting. She showed him how the celestial harmonies mirrored the balance needed in their own lives, between hard work and rest, between tending the land and tending to each other. Seeing the direct link between the grand stories and the earth he loved, Bren's skepticism softened into thoughtful understanding. From that day, Elara made a conscious decision to always integrate the new lore into practical lessons, using the stories to illustrate the importance of community care, resilience in hardship, and the moral guidance found in nature's rhythms. This successful weaving of complex myth into daily life proved the enduring, adaptable value of the First Age wisdom, strengthening the village's cultural foundation against any future doubt. Inspired by this fusion of art and life, the village craftspeople soon began to incorporate the elegant star patterns into their work. Weavers threaded silver into cloth to form the sleeping beast, and woodcarvers etched the shower of stars into bowls and furniture, spreading the harmony not just through song, but through beautiful, tangible objects that filled their homes with silent music. The idea for the Harmony Festival bloomed as naturally as the light from their tree. It was Kale who first suggested a day to celebrate all they had learned, a time to weave their new songs and stories into a single, joyous tapestry for the entire community. Elara embraced the vision instantly, her mind filling with possibilities, but the practical reality of organizing such an event soon presented a quiet mountain of its own. How could they coordinate music, food, and art for everyone with only a handful of volunteers and the limited pigments they could gather from the forest? Her initial plan was a detailed map of her own ideal festival, a schedule packed with intricate performances and complex activities. She quickly saw the strain it placed on her friends, their well-meaning faces clouded with confusion over their assigned roles. This was not the harmony she sought, so she took a breath and let the map fall. She called a meeting under the glowing boughs and asked a simple question. What part of this celebration brings you the most joy? Bren, the farmer, spoke of the satisfaction of feeding a crowd. Lyra's eyes lit up at the idea of teaching a simple, 3-note bird call to the youngest children. Others offered to build temporary stages from fallen wood, to gather berries for dyes, or to bake their family's favorite honey cakes. Elara listened, and then she delegated, matching each task to the passion behind it. The festival was no longer her creation, but theirs. On the day itself, the village green transformed into a living expression of their shared spirit. The air hummed with the sound of new songs taught by Kale and Elara, melodies that told of starlit lakes and patient treants. At the center of it all, a vast canvas of woven cloth was stretched between frames, and every villager, from the eldest to the smallest child, added a stroke with brushes dipped in ochre, berry purple, and moss green. They painted a collective mural of Elara's journey, a vibrant, slightly messy, and utterly beautiful chronicle of bridges and glowing moths that grew with every contribution. The event drew curious visitors from neighboring hamlets, who arrived with skepticism but stayed to share a meal and listen, their own guarded melodies slowly blending with the village's chorus. As twilight deepened and the trees' soft radiance intensified, a profound contentment settled over Elara. She watched as a group of children, led by a little girl with boundless confidence, began the final communal song without any prompting. Their clear, high voices carried the tune perfectly, a living tradition already passing securely into the future. The festival's triumph had woven their magic into the very identity of the place, establishing the village as a beacon. This new prominence was a shield for their way of life, but it also cast a longer shadow, a quiet acknowledgement that such a bright light could not remain a secret forever. A stranger arrived as the last note of the evening's song faded into the twilight. He stood at the edge of the gathering, his cloak worn thin from long roads and his eyes holding a quiet sorrow that seemed to absorb the tree's gentle light. Elara approached him not with questions, but with a silent invitation, guiding him to a soft patch of grass beneath the shimmering boughs. As the villagers began their next melody, a simple tune about the constancy of the stars, she watched him. He did not sing, only listened, his shoulders slowly relaxing as the harmonious sound washed over him. When the song ended, tears traced clean paths through the dust on his cheeks, a silent confession of a burden carried for far too long. His voice, when it finally came, was rough with disuse. He spoke of a homeland across the mountains where old conflicts had quieted their own traditions, where the songs that once bound his community together had been lost to hardship and the slow passage of time. The depth of his people's experience settled in Elara's chest like a physical weight, a stark reminder of how fragile such harmony could be. Here was the purpose of her journey made manifest, a chance to mend a broken thread in the world's great tapestry. Yet a quiet, protective instinct tightened within her. Their magic was still so new, so carefully nurtured. Could it survive being carried into a place touched by forgetfulness? The risk of their knowledge being misunderstood or changed from its true purpose felt very real. She looked from the stranger's hopeful face to the trusting faces of her own people, and her choice became clear. Hoarding the light would only ensure its eventual dimming. That night, she sat with him and taught him a single, uncomplicated melody, the same healing rhyme that had first answered the Glimmerwood moths. She showed him how to pour his own hope into the notes, to offer it as a comfort rather than a demand. When he prepared to leave at dawn, she presented him with a slender cutting from the glowing tree, its silver bark already pulsing with a soft, resilient light. Plant this where the memory of song feels most distant, she told him. Let its roots find your hope in the soil. As he disappeared down the forest path, his step noticeably lighter for the gift he carried, Elara felt a profound shift in the air. Their magic was no longer contained within their valley. It was now a seed traveling on the wind, carrying the potential for healing to places she might never see. This act of generosity felt right, but it also opened a door to a world of beautiful, unpredictable change, and she found herself gazing toward the distant horizon, wondering what other silent lands were waiting for a song to be remembered. The visitor's departure left a new kind of music, humming in Elara's spirit, a melody of expansive possibility. Her quiet village was no longer just a refuge, but a source. She began to dream of a constellation of harmonious places, each with its own silver leaf tree and a keeper who understood the language of the land, all connected by the same ancient, healing songs. To make this vision real, she knew the wisdom she carried needed a vessel more durable than memory alone. She enlisted Kale's patient help, and together they began the monumental task of writing everything down. The project filled her days with a profound new purpose, the scratch of her pen and the soft shuffle of parchment becoming a rhythm as constant as her own heartbeat. They documented each melody, from the simplest healing rhyme to the complex harmonies of the starry canyon, ensuring the knowledge of the first age would survive long after their own voices fell silent. Yet the sheer scope of the work was daunting. How could mere ink and paper capture the feeling of a moth's dance or the resonant warmth of the Heartstone's light? A deep anxiety whispered that she was reducing a living magic to a set of instructions, formalizing traditions that had always thrived on intuition and spontaneous connection. Her solution was to weave the lessons directly into the guide. She did not just notate the mending song, she wrote the story of the village's journey and the garden's miraculous renewal. She described the cost of sustaining the magic, the gentle weariness that came with great acts of harmony, and the importance of balancing personal spirit with communal need. The guide became a holistic manual, a chronicle of her journey's heart as much as its steps. In sharing this knowledge so openly, she risked its dilution, but she also planted the seeds for it to flourish in countless new forms, adapting to lands and people she would never meet. As she penned the final chapter, recounting the profound moment the Heartstone's fracture sealed beneath her song, a gentle tremor passed through the air around her. It was not a sound, but a sensation, a resonant hum that vibrated in the inkwell and shimmered in the leaves of the tree overhead. The magic itself was offering its quiet, unmistakable approval. The final page was inscribed with the same careful hand that had begun the journey, the ink still dark and full of purpose. Elara and Kale worked through the cool afternoon, binding the thick sheaf of parchment between two covers of smooth, silver bark that had fallen naturally from the glowing tree. Kale's sketches of star patterns and root structures adorned the margins, turning the guide into a beautiful artifact of their shared life. At the evening gathering, with the entire village watching in the tree's gentle light, they placed the completed volume on a simple wooden stand in the community hall. Elara's voice was soft but clear as she explained that this book was not a final word, but a first chapter, meant to be filled with the songs and discoveries of everyone who called this place home. A quiet murmur of approval rippled through the crowd, but it was followed by a question from one of the elder weavers, a woman who had memorized every original melody. She voiced a gentle concern, wondering if allowing new verses and personal interpretations might slowly shift the pure magic Elara had worked so hard to bring them. What if a well-meaning but misguided addition introduced a note of discord that weakened their collective harmony? This sparked a thoughtful discussion that lasted long into the twilight, a debate between the beauty of preservation and the necessity of growth. Elara listened to every voice, her own heart divided between the importance of the original songs and the vibrant, living spirit of her community. Her decision was a careful balance. She proposed that any new addition to the guide, whether a song variation or a discovered herb, must first be shared before the community. If the collective voices found it harmonious, if it resonated with a feeling of truth, and did not clash with the foundational melodies, it would be approved for inclusion. This process honored the original lore while trusting the community's shared intuition to safeguard its spirit. The guide was now secure, a stronghold of knowledge for generations yet unborn, but its very existence meant the magic was becoming more structured, its learning perhaps a little less about personal discovery and more about studying shared texts. Later that same night, as the stars emerged, a young girl no older than 5 summers sat on the steps of the community hall with a heavy book open on her lap. Her small finger traced Kale's drawing of a nightingale, and she softly hummed the simple notation beside it. When the real bird answered from a nearby branch, its song a perfect match to the one in the guide. Her gasp of delight was a quiet testament to the book's immediate power, a bridge between immense tradition and a single, wondrous moment. Seasons turned like pages in a great book, and Elara's hair began to show threads of silver as bright as the tree's bark. She still walked the forest paths with the changing weather, her journeys now often accompanied by Kale, or a small group of villagers whose eyes held the same bright wonder she once carried alone. Each return brought new gifts, a melody learned from a mountain echo, or a deeper understanding of how the starlight songs could soothe a restless spirit. Then the messages began to arrive, carried by travelers from villages she had never seen. They spoke of their own saplings, grown from cuttings of her tree, now casting a gentle glow over new community greens. They shared songs they had composed, variations on the old themes that reflected their own landscapes and joys, and they asked gentle questions about tending the magic. A quiet network was weaving itself across the land, a tapestry of communities connected by shared purpose and harmonious sound. Yet with this beautiful expansion came a private, physical truth. The steep path into the Singing Canyon now left her breathless long after she reached the top. A deep chill from the Starlet Lake would linger in her bones for days, a coolness her own inner warmth could no longer easily dispel. She felt a quiet conflict growing within, a tension between the undimmed passion in her spirit that yearned to see the frozen lightning peaks from the lake's vision and the honest, increasing need of her body for rest. The choice, when she made it, was as gentle as a falling leaf. She began to entrust the longer journeys to Kale and the other seasoned guides, her instructions given not as commands, but as shared wisdom. Her own role shifted, settling into the rich soil of the village like the deep roots of the great tree. She became the elder advisor, her days filled with teaching the very young and answering the detailed letters that arrived from distant, budding sanctuaries. This conscious passing of the torch ensured the work would flourish for generations, a seamless transition that filled her with a profound pride. Yet it also quietly closed a vibrant, personal chapter of her life, the era of her own first-hand discovery, now becoming a cherished history for others to build upon. One evening, she sat on a soft blanket, under the now grand and sprawling canopy of the glowing tree, its light a familiar comfort. She listened as Kale, his own voice steady and sure, taught a group of small children a simple round. Their clear, high voices rose in perfect, effortless harmony, weaving a new thread into the everlasting song, and Elara smiled, knowing the music was in the safest of hands. The air in the community hall was soft with the light of 100 candles, their flames steady in the still evening. Elara stood before the village, her hands cradling the Whispering Glade. Its gentle, melodic hum was a sound as familiar to them as their own heartbeats. She turned to Kale, who waited with a quiet dignity that had become his signature. "This is not an ending, but a new verse in our shared song," she said, her voice clear and warm. "You have listened with more than your ears, and you have learned that the greatest magic is not in holding the knowledge, but in knowing when to share it." She placed the slender, whispering crystal into his open palms. A profound silence held the room, followed by a wave of palpable acceptance that washed over Kale as he bowed his head in solemn gratitude. The village did not need a proclamation. They felt the shift in the very air, acknowledging him as their new guide, while their collective gaze still held a deep, abiding affection for Elara. Inside, she felt a poignant tug, a complex melody of pride for the person he had become, and a quiet sense of transition for the role that had shaped her entire adult life. It was a passing of a great responsibility, but she chose to frame it as a celebration of their community's enduring strength. She smiled, her eyes crinkling at the corners, and announced she had no intention of going anywhere. "My new role," she said, "is to be your finest student and your most dedicated storyteller for as long as these years allow." This seamless transition was the ultimate proof that their tradition was no longer fragile, but a resilient, living force that could sustain itself through generations. That night, as Elara slept peacefully in her home, her dreams were not of distant paths or uncharted peaks. Instead, she saw a vast, shimmering tapestry woven from threads of light and sound, each thread a different village, a different voice, all singing the same harmonious songs into the starlit dark. The silver in her hair seemed to catch the light of the great tree, a quiet echo of its gentle glow, as Elara spent her days in its peaceful shadow. She was often found on a soft woven blanket. A circle of wide-eyed children gathered around her as she told them the story of the Crystal Bridge, or the Treant's quiet blessing. Other times, she would simply sit alone, her voice a soft hum that wove seamlessly with the rustling leaves, a private duet with the breeze. One afternoon, she brought the great village guide into the dappled light and added a final, personal chapter. It was not a list of instructions, but a reflection on the quiet loneliness and profound joy of being a bridge, of the delicate balance between holding a secret close and giving it away to the world. She wrote of the concern that had been her constant companion on the first journey, and the deeper worry that came later, the thought that the magic might fade through her own failure to teach it well. This intimate sharing added a deeply human heart to the formal knowledge, transforming the guide from a manual into a shared emotional journey for every reader who would follow. There were moments, especially when the autumn air turned crisp and carried the scent of distant pine, when a familiar restlessness would stir within her. The old paths called with a whisper of mist and uncharted melody, a siren song she had followed for so long, But then she would look around at the village, at the harmonious life, flourishing in every garden and every song shared between neighbors, and the yearning would soften into a profound contentment. The world she had helped create was a living answer to the call of the wild. To honor both her experiences and that settled peace, she decided to cultivate a garden. In a sunny plot near her home, she planted a living collection of her journey, each bed dedicated to a different magical encounter. Here grew the shy, bell-shaped flowers that echoed the canyon's chimes, and there, a low creeping moss that shimmered with the same soft light as the glimmerwood moths. Beside each plant, a small, smooth stone bore a carved plaque telling its story, a tactile history anyone could touch and learn from. This garden of memory quickly became a new sanctuary for the village, a place of quiet learning and meditative peace, where individuals could connect physically with the lore. It was a living, growing monument, cementing her legacy not in stone, but in blossoming, fragrant life. One warm afternoon, as she gently watered a patch of starry night phlox, the clear, high sound of children's voices drifted from the central green. They were singing the very first healing rhyme she had ever taught them, the simple melody from her own childhood that had once answered the moths. The notes were unchanged, perfectly pure, carried on the air by a new generation that had never known a world without its harmony. Elara paused, her hand resting on the damp earth, and listened as the familiar song wrapped around her like a gentle embrace, a perfect, enduring echo of a journey that had truly come full circle. A deep stillness settled over the village as the community gathered without a single word being called. They simply felt the pull, a quiet understanding that drew them to the foot of the great glowing tree where Elara waited. Her form was more delicate now, but her posture remained straight, her hands resting gently on her knees as she sat on the soft moss. When the last person found their place in the circle, she lifted her head, and from her lips came the first, simple notes of the healing rhyme, the very same melody that had answered the moths in the Whispering Glade a lifetime ago. One by one, every voice joined hers, young and old, their song weaving into a single, resonant thread of sound. As they sang, something extraordinary began to happen. The tree's silver light swelled, its gentle radiance brightening until every face was bathed in a soft, ethereal glow. The very air around them began to shimmer, thick with visible motes of golden light that drifted and danced in time with the music, a gentle magic made manifest for all to see. The song itself seemed to gain a physical presence, hanging in the air long after the final note was sung, a tangible echo of harmony that settled over the village like a warm, comforting blanket. In that shared silence, every person felt a profound and unshakable connection, not just to each other, but to the ancient peace of the First Age, as if the world itself was listening and offering its silent, profound approval. Elara had poured every ounce of her love, her hope, and her long journey into that one melody, a final and powerful blessing offered freely to her people. There was no conflict in this moment, only the bittersweet beauty of a perfect circle closing, a life's work witnessed in its full and glorious flowering. The magic was no longer a secret to be protected or a lesson to be taught. It was alive, thriving, and deeply loved, woven into the very breath of the community. As the visible shimmer in the air slowly faded, the echo of the song did not vanish from their ears, but settled deep within their hearts, a permanent resonance that promised the harmony would indeed continue, carried forward on the breath of generations yet to come. The first frost came not as a gentle dusting, but as a sudden, biting wave of silver that swept down from the mountains weeks before its time. It was a silent, glittering invasion that coated the fields and frosted the windows, and it settled with a particular weight upon the village's heart. The great glowing tree, its leaves usually vibrant with captured light, began to dim under the unnatural cold, each leaf drooping as if under a great physical burden. The delicate plants in Elara's garden grew still, their subtle chimes and soft lights fading into a brittle silence. A shared concern moved through the community, a feeling that the very source of their harmony was being quieted. Without a word needing to be spoken, they gathered, their breaths puffing in the frigid air, forming a wide, determined circle around the trembling tree. Elara stood beside Kale, her hand finding his, and as their fingers linked, the circle was completed, a human chain of shared purpose against the encroaching cold. Kale's voice rose first, clear and steady, offering the foundational note of the most complex mending song, the one born at the Heartstone. Elara's voice joined his, aged but resonant, weaving in the memory of that first, determined journey. Then, one by one, every villager added their voice. They sang not just the notes, but their individual memories into the melody, the baker recalling the warmth of his ovens, the weaver the softness of new wool, the children the feeling of sun on their faces. They poured every memory of comfort, every ounce of their collective hope and shared warmth into the rising harmony. The air above them began to shimmer, thickening with the tangible force of their united will. A visible dome of golden light slowly manifested, arching over the tree and the garden, its surface rippling with the intricate patterns of their combined song. Where the light touched, the harsh frost did not simply vanish, it transformed. The biting silver softened into a gentle, life-giving dew that dripped from every leaf and petal, leaving the tree and the garden glistening and unharmed, their inner lights pulsing back to life with a renewed, defiant strength. The dome held for a long moment, a perfect, silent testament to their unity, before dissolving into a final, warm gust of air that carried the last note of their song across the revitalized land. They had not just defended their home, they had proven that the songs Elara brought were no longer a borrowed magic, but a power born from their own connected spirits, a strength that could weather any challenge as long as they stood together. The warm days that followed felt like a gentle, collective exhale for the village. The great glowing tree shone with a radiance that seemed to pulse in time with the community's heartbeat, its light spilling over the gardens and pathways in soft, silver waves. Every evening, the songs rose with a deeper, more resonant understanding, each voice carrying not just the melody, but the profound memory of the frost they had turned to dew. Elara watched it all from her garden bench, her hands resting in her lap, a quiet smile gracing her features. She saw the lore she had brought home woven into the very fabric of existence, in the way a parent hummed a healing rhyme to soothe a child, in the way neighbors worked together in the fields, their movements a silent, harmonious rhythm. The tales of the First Age were no longer stories from a distant past, but the living, breathing truth of their present, carried forward now by countless voices. One morning, the village awoke to a profound and peaceful silence. Elara had completed her journey in her sleep, her final dream, a voyage across endless, starlit vistas, where every star was a familiar song. The news moved through the community, not as a shock, but as a soft, expected changing of the seasons. There was a quiet ache for the sound of her voice and the wisdom in her eyes. But this feeling was quickly met by a swell of gratitude that rose from the very soil. They did not dwell on her final moments, but instead gathered to celebrate the incredible tapestry of her life. They shared stories of her first uncertain journey, of the lessons she had taught their children, and of the quiet strength she had shown in sharing their magic with the wider world. Her legacy was not a single thing to be pointed to, but a presence that was everywhere, in the resilient light of the tree, in every note of their evening songs, and in the generous hearts of her people. This enduring spirit ensures that the cozy fantasy lore she championed will continue to comfort and inspire for ages to come. It lives on as a relaxing ambience for the soul, a gentle reminder that even the smallest act of harmony can mend the world, and that the most beautiful songs are those we choose to sing together.